Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Never a dull week in the world of Swindon Town. A new signing in the door, 3 pre-season friendlies to sink our teeth into, a fans forum, and a preview of the pre-season friendly at Eastleigh. Before any of that, though, we have a wonderful display of co-hosts to join us today. So, to start with, Chris, how are you?
I'm not too bad, mate. It's been good, and there's been a few things to get to talk about tonight. Actually, it's been a semi-busy week.
100%. Got about an hour to sort of speak our worries and our pleasures of Swindon Town. Next we have Malcolm, also known as Rockin' Robin.
Good evening. How are you, everybody?
Good evening, Mel. You okay?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Good. Now we have the glorious tones of Andrew Hawes. How are you, Andrew?
I'm all right once I turn my microphone on, how professional I am. But good.
Good, wonderful. Now we have Arch. Arch, you there?
Yeah, not bad at all, mate. It's been a little while, but
yeah,
back once again.
Glad.
So,
yeah, good to have you, Arch. Good to have you back. We've got a long list of co-hosts today. Daz, you okay?
Hi. Yeah, I'm fine. On time this week.
On time this week, yeah.
No technical issues for me.
Lovely. Good start. And certainly last but not least, a new contributor to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. We have Daisy. How are you, Daisy?
I'm not too bad, thank you. It's quite exciting because it's my first one this evening, so.
Yeah, of course. It's gonna be a good one for sure to start you off on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Right. So as I said in the preview, we've got quite a bit to sort of go through, but I think the sort of elephant in the room is the new signing of Swindon Town, a certain Dan Kemp. Now I'll just read through what Dan himself had to say and Flynn. So Dan had to say, speaking to Town's media team, he said the manager and I have had good chats from when I've played against his teams over the years, and with the club the way it is, the philosophy and the way of playing, I'm just excited to be here. I've always come up against Swindon teams, and I felt they are a really good club. So many different reasons to come here, but I just feel like this is the right move for the stage in my career. And then Flynn said he had a very, very successful loan period at the end of last season with Hartlepool, hitting double figures in goals and assists. And I think with his ability and his upbringing, where he came through, we've got a player on our hands. It's not just his goals, but his set-piece delivery too. And he can play in a number of positions, so he will provide competition across the midfield, which is great for us. From the looks of it, a good, decent signing on our hands. Chris, what have you got to say for the signing so far?
Actually, when we lost with Johnny Williams from last year, I think he comes in and almost gives us what we had with Williams. You know, those goals from midfield, which we desperately needed to replace, and we've been pretty poor at set pieces for quite a while now. So having someone who can put that ball on the box is a pretty big ask as well. And we've seen some of the free kicks he scored last year. I mean, 9 goals in 16 games from midfield is pretty good, and we can't rely on Charlie to get all our goals. So bringing in someone who's going to get us those goals from outside of the strikers can only be a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. Arch, I know you're a big advocate of Kemp.
Yes, I mean, I was doing some looking, so a little bit of background on him. He came up through the West Ham Academy, so he's from London, and Yeah, he's had a few loan spells. He went to Orient for a while and then signed for MK Dons on deadline day back in, I believe it was January of 2022. But yeah, and he was highly rated. He's been highly rated wherever he's been. Obviously, at MK Dons, I was having a little look, and he is highly rated by MK Dons fans. But he doesn't really fit into the system they play. They don't really play that number 10 role as such. He doesn't really slot into their system very well. A lot of his fans, I've spoken to a few MK Dons fans, and the general consensus is they were hoping he'd come back into the team this season. But yeah, other than that, it's kind of like you kind of look at the kind of character he is, and he kind of fits that mold of like a Jack Payne-esque character, where he can shoot from midfield. You know, he's that small, nimble midfielder who wants to get the ball forward. And I think, yeah, we have got a really exciting player on our hand.
Yeah, obviously a lone player, so you know
I'm trying not to fall in love too much because
exactly,
he will be one that breaks all of our hearts. I
yeah,
reckon.
and
that's my prediction. We are all going to have our hearts broken at the end of the season.
You heard it here first. But yeah, obviously the main concern is that you know he could be recalled in January. But yeah, look. But Andrew, have you sort of had the opportunity to speak to him yet?
Yes, yeah. I was at the game yesterday at the Bristol City training ground, and we had a chat with him afterwards. He seems very sort of level-headed, very focused, and quite clearly, I think he does like the idea of getting that responsibility and being the number 10, which is what he played there, and being that kind of creative force. And he's just looking as well to find somewhere where he can get regular games and get his career kind of moving again, really, because it's got a little bit stuck. He's done quite well at Orient, as you know, as Archer was saying earlier. He's not really wanted at MK Dons by the sounds of it, so he needs somewhere to play regularly and show the ability that he's got. And believe it or not, I do remember him scoring for West Ham under-23s against us as well. Cause
Wow.
Some people have to attend Football League Trophy games regardless of the competition. Not that's a complaint about doing my job, but
yeah.
But no, he like I said, I sort of played him in the number 10. He was quite busy, looking to get involved. I think given he kind of been training with them for too long, it was quite a reasonable debut against what was essentially championship opposition. So hopefully, as Chris said, he does kind of fill that gap of goals and assists that has gone in the charming ginger shape of Johnny Williams.
yeah, definitely. I think the overall sort of consensus on Twitter is that he is a really, really good signing for us. Only time would tell, but I think he's really promising. And for the first sort of outfield player signing that we've made, I think it shows ambition. And I'm excited for more signings to come through the door. Who haven't we spoke to? Daz, anything to add on what we've spoken on?
Well, obviously, we don't want to fall in love with lone players, and the sort of prospect of him possibly being recalled in January. I'd just like to say that if he doesn't fit into MK Dons' playing style now, why would they bring him back in January? Unless obviously we're crowned champions by December.
Yeah, it's a great point, but the worry is that they'd recall him and possibly want to sell him on. It happened with Tyree Simpson, didn't it? At Ipswich, he was recalled because they wanted money for him, and then he never ended up playing another game for him. Malk, anything to add?
No, kind of echo what everyone else is saying, really.
Yeah.
It's an exciting prospect and kind of a landmark on what Flynn's going to do. So
yeah,
obviously looking to get the ball forward and get the service to Austin and any other striker that we get in. But yeah, very positive, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play.
Yeah, Daisy, are you happy with the signing? Are you disappointed? What are your feelings so far?
I think he's a really good signing, and he's definitely going to bring some creativity to the team, which I think we definitely sort of lacked last season. But the only concern is that if he gets recalled in January, but I guess after
Yeah,
this week,
100%, 100%. Oh, sorry, carry on. Oh, are you done?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. Yeah. So, sort of general sort of feeling is good signing. Just obviously it's a lone player, so as Arch said, don't want to fall in love. And yeah, but I'm pretty confident that he's going to be a big player for us this season. So yeah, anything more to add from anyone?
Yeah,
on that?
I was going to just quickly add in. I think the only reason he fell out of favour at MK Dons is when Scott Twine came in.
Oh wow.
I'm 99% sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading that. And then with Scott Twine coming in, the system slightly changed, and then that is why he fell out of favour.
Right.
But yeah, no, I just thought that was something relatively interesting to just add into the discussion.
Yeah.
Just a cool little bit of trivia.
There you go. Oh wow, I didn't know that. So thank you, Arch. Right. So obviously, first signing through the door. I think we'll move on to the friendlies now. Obviously, the first sort of friendly since last week, we went away to Swansea where we lost 5-0. Andrew, were you at Swansea?
I wasn't. That really was behind closed doors. So the only
Right.
bits I've seen are the video clips of the goals, which I'm guessing anyone who wanted to see or
Yeah, right.
from behind the sofa to look at them has seen.
Yeah. So again, I think, well, there's not much to go off of it on the socials, but yeah, crack on, Chris.
I was going to say, I think the one thing that we can take from this, and it probably breeds into Bristol City a bit as well, is that all right, we lost 5-0, but for the first half in that, when we had our stronger team out, we were competing with them, we were playing well, and we were losing, but we were losing against a team 2 tiers up above from us.
Yeah.
And it's only once where obviously we made all those changes and the younger lads came on that we struggled. So the score obviously might says that we got battered, but I think the contexts of the two teams there we need to think about.
Yeah, 100%. Look, we're a League Two side. It's sad to hear and sort of get your head round, but we're not a Championship side anymore. And Swansea, Championship side, they've got better players, they've got better setup. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a tough test. And like you said, Chris, it certainly was the case in the Bristol game. We were we held our own with our strongest side, and obviously you're going to bring on your less experienced players, your academy players, and that's certainly when we conceded more goals. Am I right in saying that Devine got injured in the Swansea game?
Yes, in the Swansea game, Devine was injured and seriously injured. He's going to need surgery on a hamstring. He's going to be out for a very long time. And also Tom Clayton was injured and could be out anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks, which is another big blow. And now we've basically not got a left back.
Yeah, right. So we'll definitely come on to this later in the show. But we're definitely got some holes at the back. That's possibly obviously where new signings are going to need to come in. But yeah, Devine, obviously he didn't play a massive part last season. But the old game that he played, he looked decent, he looked good. But it's just so frustrating that the first game back he plays, he does his hammy. So wish him all the best on recovery. But yeah, we're certainly going to need to look at strengthening that back line. Chris, anything to add?
That's 48, 49 minutes that Devine played at Orient. He was our best player. He was absolutely outstanding.
100%.
And that's what makes it even more frustrating the fact that we saw what we get from him, but he's just had no luck, has he? He just can't buy any luck.
Yeah, look, he must be absolutely gutted. You know, pre-season game, first game back, and he does exactly what he done last time. It's frustrating for us, so I can't imagine how he must be feeling. So that pretty much wraps up Swansea. I mean, we didn't really get to see a lot of it. I think our defence was probably our worst sort of feature of that game, and yeah, it's a tough one to take because we weren't there to watch. But then obviously we then come along to Bristol City where we lost 7-1. Andrew, I know you were at Bristol City.
Yes.
Talk to us. What was your feeling of the game? How did you think we lined up? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the first thing I should say was it was slightly weird in that it was essentially two separate 60-minute games, really. So the kind of 7-1 is a combined score from those.
Yeah.
So essentially, the first sort of 60 minutes was pretty much. I think you'd sort of consider probably the sort of strongest 11. Kemp played number 10. You had Austin, Hepburn, Murphy up front.
Yeah.
Hutton at wing back, and the sort of left wing back was Sam Pearson, who is at Bristol City, and the sort of shaggy blonde-haired guy who played against Swindon for Wimbledon last year, or I think he did for the first half.
Yeah.
At least. So sort of Kemp at number 10. You've got Lavigne, Brewitt, and Blake Tracy as the three central defenders, and Mahoney in goal, and Khan in midfield. So essentially, you've got close on to your strongest lineup. The sort of Bristol City journalist there said that again, it was pretty close to a first team for them, with a couple of exceptions. They had Alex Scott in their team, who I think Premier League clubs, or sort of the kind of Wolves and Bournemouths of the Premier League, are busy fighting over at the moment. Who played in that? So you look at the kind of 2-1 there, and that was kind of respectable. Kemp looked quite encouraging. They really did try and sort of pass out from the back much more than get it forward early. The goal they scored was quite a neat one because McEachran nicked the ball sort of midway inside the Bristol City half, put it out to Austin. Austin quickly crossed, and Hepburn Murphy finished. So the goal was good. I mean, Bristol City were more dangerous in front of goal and had more chances. Scott hit the woodwork a couple of times, forced a good save from the goalkeeper. But that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. I think I felt better about things having seen that sort of 60 minutes compared to sort of what you've read and what you've heard, because I haven't been able to sort of make some of the other pre-season games. The second 60 minutes was the kind of players on the fringes. So you got Shade for that, you had Darcy for that, you had Wakeling up front, you had Anton Dworzak playing, Harrison Minton, Lewis Ward, and then the other players essentially were part of Bristol City's under 21 lineup, and the Bristol City lineup that it changed was still fairly strong, still sort of plenty of recognised first team players in that. So that's where so Swindon lost the first game, if you like, 2-1. That's where the kind of 5-0 was. So again, a lot of that is about looking at the sort of context, and you are having players who are sort of championship regulars against their own teams under 21s, and Swindon sort of second place. I suppose the only thing I would say, not to sound like I'm kind of because you don't want to sound too sort of happy clappy, as I believe the is about it. I suppose the only thing is that even in what's clearly a sort of a difficult environment to play with, I guess it felt like Shea looked a bit flat. He made a mistake that led to one of the goals.
Yeah.
Minton got a bit frustrated because he's got two Bristol City under 21 down. You could see him sort of like just kind of diving in a bit. Wakeling ran hard, no surprise, but the sort of one really good opportunity he had, he took a too heavy a touch and it kind of went. And you had Jake Kane in midfield as well. And I suppose the thing is that's a difficult environment to play in, but I guess you're hoping that in that environment they look like they at least are sort of swimming and not sinking, and everyone kind of sank a bit. So I think the slight disappointment of that, but not to get too worried about it, is that perhaps those players didn't, or for me, didn't quite make the case that it's like, hey, I'm knocking. Hey, I'm knocking on the first team door here. If anyone
Yeah.
goes down injured, but I wouldn't worry about the actual sort of scoreline of it all too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Andrew, perhaps as well. How did Austin and Hepburn Murphy look as a partnership? Whether Hepburn Murphy could play a little bit more central this year?
Yeah, no, I think that was it. It was basically sort of 3-4-1-1-2 pretty much. You had Kemp as the number 10, and Austin and Hepburn Murphy were essentially the two. They were the two central strikers. Like I said, they linked up for the goal. Austin provided Hepburn Murphy with that. So yeah, I think at the moment they look like they would be the first choice strike pair, because we seem pretty sort of wedded to kind of three at the back and two up front, and then sort of doing whatever little adjustments you want with the midfield. So it feels like if the Colchester game was tomorrow, I'd be pretty confident that would be the starting striking partnership.
Yeah, look, I've on the face of things, 7-1. It's like, wow, we got absolutely battered there. But like you said, Andrew, you break it down into the first 60 minutes. We did not look out of place with a strong Bristol City side at all. We look very comfortable, and yeah. So obviously it brings in questions of our depth, because we played our strongest side, and the moment we start bringing subs on, the goals start coming, and everyone knows you need a strong bench, and it's caught us out at times in the past few seasons. So look, it shows we need players in. Flynn knows we need players in, but yeah, it's definitely a question of our depth as a squad. Anything to sort of add on that on the Bristol City game?
No, I don't think so. Like I say, it does, as you said, it does need that bit of context, and you're right. I don't think anyone thinks the squad is sort of fully fleshed out and ready for Colchester yet. And,
Right. Yeah.
I don't think the manager does either.
No.
So that's it. But I think it looks like it's not going to be about numbers of signings. I think it is going to be that sort of waiting for players who you think can add something now, like Kemp. Kemp is not old, but at the same time he's not exactly a novice anymore.
Yeah.
He's played a good number of games. So I think generally, though, it's that sort of player they'll be
Quality over
bring in.
quantity.
Yeah, and maybe if we're still sort of struggling with numbers and injuries, then maybe you might have to go at loans. But I think for people looking for lots of signings, their keyboards might get a bit inflamed, but hopefully it'll be people of the sort of at least the kind of Kemp ilk, who are not entirely looking to prove themselves, but have a track record, and there's a clear idea of how they'll fit into the way we want to play. Because I think all the friendlies, from what I've read, pretty much have been with sort of three at the back.
Yeah, definitely. Right, I think that sort of wraps up Bristol City, and then so later on that yesterday, moved on to Hereford, where we saw Paul Caddis in the dugout. Arch, you were there. Arch, are you there now?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, got you loud and clear.
Sorry, my internet was being interesting there. Hereford was interesting. It was just a cheeky little journey up from London. Nice little one to drive up to and drive back. But,
yeah, nice one.
Yeah, Hereford in itself was quite interesting. Obviously, we saw essentially a youth side alongside the likes of Adeloy and Aguiar, who you could kind of potentially argue have been, they're looking not. It's kind of like the idea you'll get. They're not exactly in the glimpses of in first team football. I mean, that's the only thing you can really assume. But obviously, we took the youth side up. You're looking at the likes of Sonny Hart, Harvey Fox. So the more promising youth lads. Then so that was I believe so it was a 7:30 kickoff. It's decent ground. Don't know if people have been to Hereford. It's a nice little trip. It's one of those clubs you're hoping to get back into the football league at some point. And I'm not just saying that because it's Paul Caddis, but so I mean, for the most part, from the start, we looked all right up until the halfway line, and then it was kind of moving forward from there. I mean, I'm not sure if it's just because Hereford were, it did come across like men versus boys, I think is the best way of putting it, especially when you're getting into like the final third, like moving up the field. There was some great passing play out of the back, but you're getting up to the defensive line and you've got like these huge lads in the back line. They were playing a 4-back, and we just couldn't see. My younger lads just couldn't see. And that was kind of like the story of the entire game, really. In terms of really who I'm assuming listeners will want to hear about, mainly Aguiar and Adaloy. They both got taken. I think Aguiar played the full 90. Adaloy got taken off quite early into the game, but neither of them seemed to be making a huge impact, which it was quite sad to see. Adaloy got through on goal once, I believe, and it was kind of a repeat of that. I can't remember who it was we played when Adaloy went 1-on-1 with the keeper, and he tried to go around him, and the ball got taken off at his feet. It kind of looked like the ball got stuck underneath him a bit, and that was his only real attempt on target. I know Aguiar got a shot on target in the second half, but other than that, it wasn't a huge impact. It seemed like the main passes I was seeing from Aguiar were into Adaloy, and that was really all you really saw. But yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, you had like 16-year-old, 17-year-old lads playing against what is essentially a full like.
Is it away to Barrow? Sorry.
What was that? It was against Barrow. Was that?
I think
it was against Barrow. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was essentially that. That's how it felt. But yeah, I mean, it was an interest. It was a good run out, I think, is the best way of putting it for the younger lads. It wasn't really anything you should look at as a gauge for this season, the Hereford game, mainly because of the fact it was just the youth lads. I think the Bristol City game was the game you're really looking at if you're looking at more of a like the first half of that Bristol City game is more of your gauge for this season with the first team we currently have. But they still put up like a decent shift. I think the players that I'd say really stood out to me was Jackson Brown and Sonny Hart. The way Sonny Hart imposed himself on the game was ridiculous for someone of his age. Is he 17 now?
Yeah, 17, I think.
Yeah, he's absolutely huge. For starters, like that lad is built like a brick wall. And yeah, no, he was like the way he was like talking to his back line, the way he was imposing himself. I believe he was captain as well. I'm 99% sure. But yeah, the way he was imposing himself onto like people like that could have easily been twice his age, and the way he was like he just played with a level of confidence that you would not expect for someone of his age. It was just very impressive, to see.
Arch,
Well, he was sitting in like a CDM kind of role. He was just in front of the defenders, kind of playing the ball forward through the midfield. The way he moved on the ball was brilliant. There was a few times he'd give it away cheaply, but that's kind of, it's what you'd expect from a younger lad. It was kind of a mistake you'd expect from 17-year-old, 18-year-old lad. But then he would fight to get back and win the ball back. I remember one challenge he put in. Literally, it was he gave the ball away, tracked back probably about 20 meters, and just put in this challenge, and it was brilliant to watch. But yeah, I'd say they were the two big highlights that I'd take from that. I know as well, Hubbard came on, I think in about the 80th minute. Hubbard and Carnu came on. Carnu struggled really to make an impact. He didn't really end up getting the ball forward. Unfortunately, he kind of was a bit unlucky in that sense. The ball never really came to him. But Hubbard looked, he looked decent. He looked solid on the ball. The way he moved about, technically, he's quite talented. But the only kind of concern you'd have there is his height. He isn't very tall at all. I'm not sure how tall he is, but I believe he was playing out wide. He was playing out wide on the wing, and when he was kind of going into challenges against these bigger like right backs, he was really struggling. But then again, it's one of those things. As he gets older, he will grow. He'll bulk out a bit. But yeah, I think those were my main takeaways from Hereford. Sorry if I've kind of waffled on a bit and gone on a bit of a tangent.
Not cool.
Say one thing though to Andrew and to Arch really from those two games. Was there any of the trialists that sort of showed anything that sort of, these could be interesting?
I was going to say I probably should speak about the trialist from the Hereford game. I saw people ranting and raving about him after the game on Twitter. A few people were saying he looked decent. He added something new. I didn't really see that, in all honesty. I thought he looked all right in midfield. Like he'd be an all right squad player. But other than that, I didn't really see anything from him which screamed we should be offering this lad a contract. It was very much a he's all right. But then again, and then you consider, if I'm sat there saying he's all right, and you consider the squad he was playing around, and obviously the opposition, you're kind of thinking, I'm not sure we should be offering him a contract. In all honesty, I don't think he offered enough to really make a difference to a League Two side. But that was just my take on it. I don't know if anyone else saw him at all. But yeah, that was my take on the trialist.
Yeah, Arch. But we're a Swindon Town podcast. We're certainly not a Hereford podcast. But of course, the manager Paul Caddis is of course a Red. There was once talks of him, possibly being interviewed for the manager of Swindon Town. How did Paul Caddis line up his side, and what if in the future we were to see Paul Caddis in the dugouts, what would we expect to see from a Paul Caddis Swindon side?
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of I was speaking to Caddis, funnily enough, before the game, and it was one of the things he said was, Hereford were a part-time team compared to there's some full-time teams in the league, but the one thing he said which really kind of resonated was we might be outskilled, but we'll never be outworked, and it really shone through in the game. You consider you've got part-time lads, they're probably training once or twice a week. They're playing against, albeit younger, but professional football players, and they were running their socks off into the 90th minute, which I thought was outrageous. I was there with my dad, and my dad was saying, you'll see the Swindon lads start kind of like, picking up the tempo a bit now because the Hereford lads will start getting tired. It literally wasn't anything like that. They looked like a full-time side. Like they looked like they were good, drilled well. Some of the some absolute peaches of passes being played. Like some of the movement to get the ball forward and break through the lines was really good. Some of like the set piece work. But yeah, I think that is kind of it is really Caddis has built a team in his image, if you will, but very, very hard working. I think that's the best way of putting it. But then again, I am also head of Paul Caddis propaganda. I absolutely love the man. So if you wanted a less biased opinion, you might want to outsource that as well. But yeah, that was kind of my take on it.
Yeah, Andrew, were you were at Hereford?
No, I just did Bristol City. I couldn't do the
right,
double
yeah,
bill. So,
of course.
Like I say, going back quickly to Chris's point, all the trialists bar Lewis Ward are so Bristol City under 21, broadly under 23 players. The best of them was probably, I would say, a defensive midfielder, Omar Taylor-Clark, who I think played a little bit for their first team in the championship, but it's still quite young. So if you know, he looked the most sort of effective, but again out of the players other than Pearson in the first half, he's one with a little bit of experience. So whether something would come of that down the line or not, but do we need defensive midfielders? Have we got enough midfielders and so on and so forth? But I must admit, I don't quite know how much there was so much Bristol City involvement, whether it's to help them or partly to help us, and maybe to say maybe here are some of the players we're thinking sending out on loan. Have a look at them in your environment. But he would be the one who caught my uneducated eye.
I actually think the central defensive midfielder is one of our biggest holes, because I don't think we've got anyone who naturally can play that. I know Saido Khan played there a lot last year, but I just don't think that's his position. I think you're going to get more out of him further forward. When he was playing at Chesterfield before, he was so much more effective further forward, and he was okay at times, but I just don't think that defensive midfield is his role. He's not got that game.
Yeah, it's certainly a position that I'm sure Flynn will be looking at trying to get players in. Obviously, we spoke about it earlier. Our back line is fairly weak at the minute as well. Darren Jackson on Twitter commented, surprised with our defensive situation. We didn't offer Jordan Moore-Taylor a contract. Seemed to be the type of experience we need. Yeah, look, there's obviously a reason we didn't sign him. We didn't have the situation with Devine and Clayton. Certainly at that time, I think possibly that could have swayed the situation. I don't believe we offered him a contract, so it wasn't a sort of a situation where he chose Forest Green over us. But I don't know if we'll ever know why we didn't, or why that didn't happen. But I think as fans, we've got to trust Flynn and trust that he's got better players in mind to bring in that position. Unless anybody's got anything to add, I think that's a good sort of segue into our next segment.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you've got to really consider with GMT. Is like people will always sit there and our fan, as fans, we ask questions. That's just, it's what you do as fans. You want to make sure your club's being run right. But if you really step back and think about it logically, at the time when he was trialling, we also had Clayton and Reece Devine filling the same position. So Mike Flynn's going to have looked at that and thought, you know what, we've already got quality in that position. What is the point in wasting our budget? Which, our fans also coming out and saying, obviously we've got too small of a budget, this and that. Then why are we complaining that we haven't signed a player who at the time would have been just an extra player for that position that we wouldn't have needed before the injuries?
Yeah.
That to me is what doesn't make sense. Our fans come out and we're saying, we don't have a budget to compete, this and that, like we've been lied to. Even if you believe that, why would you then add or roll of? That's right, just the question I'd pose. But I think it made sense not to sign him at the time. Obviously, conditions have arisen where it probably would have been useful to have him. But it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I said it earlier. If we were given the option now, it might be different. But look, that player's gone. We can't sign him anymore. I'm sure Flynn has got his eye on other centre backs, other left backs, and players that he wants to bring in. And I think we've just got to trust the process. I think the signing of Dan Kemp is obviously he's a high caliber player. I think it shows that we're going for quality over quantity. I'd certainly rather wait another week or two and bring in 3 or 4 decent quality signings than just bring in a load of just mediocre players that will probably just stay on the bench. But yeah, this sort of segues us into our next section. We've obviously had sort of a handful of pre-season games now. We've had the opportunity of seeing how a Flynn side will line up. You know, the position that he's going to the formation that he's going to be playing. We've certainly seen what he thinks so far that his strongest side will be. So, Daisy, we'll bring you into this now. What sort of position do you think Flynn will need to be looking at bringing in new players in, and where do you think we're the most weakest at the minute?
I think we're lacking in our defence at the moment. I wouldn't mind having also like quite a player like Anthony Grant. I feel like we'd really benefit from that in the team, and quite like a tall, burly player. I feel like we just really benefit from that.
Yeah, definitely. Like a big build, you know, sort of like just solid player in the middle to sort of calm things down and do all the dirty work. You know, at the minute we've got Saidi Khan, we've got Ronan Darcy, Jake Kane. You know, these players they're not the type of players to impose sort of their stature and their build on the other players. They're sort of, you know, tricky players. So yeah, certainly Daisy. I think that would sort of be a player I'd be, if I was Flynn, to be bringing in a player for that. Daz, we haven't heard from you in a while. Are you still there?
I am still here. Yeah, well, Daisy's stolen the words right out of my mouth. Couldn't agree more. But I also think we need another striker, and that might rattle a few cages and ruffle a few feathers. But I've just got a gut feeling that we might have an injury to a certain player. I've just got a feeling. That's me being my negative self. Sorry, but I think there's still a need for a striker. There's about and as Daisy said, defence definitely.
Yeah, well, it's a good point, Daz. Look, you've got to have a backup plan, because at the end of the day, these are human beings and injuries can happen. You know, mistakes can happen. So you've definitely got to have a backup plan, and you can't just rely on, you know, Charlie Austin playing every single game of the season. Arch, how many players do you reckon we need to bring in to be a promotion worthy side, or do you think we're already there?
We're not already there. Anyone who says that is serious. I'm not going to say, you know, I'm not going to be too mean, but I think anyone who says that should have a little think about what they've said and then say it again. But me personally, I'd say we can't expect a player like, yeah, it's all well and good that we've got Charlie Austin up top. You can't expect him to be playing every single season. That's just a ridiculous idea. I can't fathom that that's something that's even being considered at Swindon. Because one injury and your season's gone. When I'm looking at the league and the kind of money being spent, I cannot see us going up autos this year. I don't think that we as a club will have the budget comparable to teams like Stockport, teams like Gillingham, that will be pushing for those top three spots. I don't think that's in my personal opinion. I don't think that's something that's going to be possible. Really, we'd be looking for a playoff finish and getting up through the playoffs. And for me personally, what you'll need for that is the squad depth. Because obviously your season's going to end up being a bit longer. You need if we go aiming to go up through the playoffs, you're going to need obviously the two legs as well. That's I think where we are massively lacking. You look at the Bristol City game, you look at the Swansea game, we hang on for the first 45, 60 minutes. And then as soon as we make substitutions to kind of, you know, the second choice players or some of the squad players, it all falls off a cliff. So we were 2-1. We were 2-1 down to Bristol City for the first, before we started making changes. much blew up in a fit of rage that the game ended up being 7-1. You look at the squad, obviously, that came out the second half, and it's completely different. But and then Swansea as well. We held on for the first 40 minutes at Swansea. I believe was it 1-0, 1-0 down at half time?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So our first like choice squad is obviously is decent, and I believe the first team squad has what it takes to an extent to start pushing for that. Maybe looking at around a similar finish to last year in this league, but we need to bring in some decent centre backs, some big centre backs that we can rely on as squad players. Potentially also looking at someone who can defend slightly better than Hutton. There was an interesting defensive masterclass that I saw on some of the highlights while he's been playing, as well as that the Shade masterclass that was also lovely when he was being played at left wing back. I'm pretty sure it was at left wing back. When he passed it back, completely missed the centre back, and the Bristol City player has gone through. But they're not defenders, and they're being played in defensive positions. I feel like we do need to bring in some true wing backs that we can play down those sides that can defend well and are reliable, and we can rely on them. But I'd say that's mainly where we're lacking. I feel like our midfield is probably our strongest position. Essentially, obviously, we've just brought in Dan Kemp, so he's a threat from pretty much anything. Jake Kane, we know, can score set pieces. You've got McEachran. He's quality in midfield. I would argue he's one of our best players last year. We've got players that can do a job throughout the midfield. I think that's kind of where we're least looking for players. I feel if we bring in one more, decent goal scoring striker and bring in a couple more defenders, we're looking decent for a playoff finish, which I think should be the goal this year. I think it is unrealistic to say that we'd be going for a top 3 this year. Obviously, I might eat my words at the end of the season. We'll see, but I'd argue it is. It's much more realistic to be aiming for playoffs.
Yeah, look, I think you hit the nail on it there. I think nobody's arguing we need to bring defenders in. I think nobody's arguing that at all. I'd certainly say sort of the more attacking sort of side of the squad, we're all right. I think overall we're lacking in depth, which could certainly catch us out. I think this transfer window, I think loan players are going to be sort of a big part of our sort of transfer activity. And yeah, I mean, only time will tell. Chris, what are your sort of views on the squad as it is now, and what positions do we need to strengthen them?
I see the squad as we are. There are 4 main weaknesses for me, and what we need is a big centre half with some experience who can sit in the middle. If Flynn's going to play the 3, I want a guy to sit in the middle and run that back line. Someone who's going to stick his head in there. Ideally, Sean Taylor. Someone like that. That's what we need in that back line. Someone to just run that back line, who will go and tackle everything, head everything, and that's one. I do think we need to bring in someone to play on that left side. Shade's not the answer. Shade as a wing back for me, it's just not an option. We've seen little bits and bobs about him. He's actually, for me, he's been more effective coming off the bench in those 15-20 minute cameos than he has when he started. But I think we need to end that wing back experiment with him. Another glaring error is that a proper defensive midfielder, someone who's going to go on and stick his boot in, someone who's going to try and bully the other teams. We need a big striker, just to give us something different, because that's not something we've got. Someone who's going to go up there, help and play a different role, someone who can run around, hold the ball up, bring the midfielders into play, because I think someone like that alongside Charlie Austin will give us a different dimension. And then obviously if that doesn't work, we can bring we could bring Hepburn Murphy on, which is another different dynamic. But for me, those are the 4 key signings. Obviously, our lack of depth shows we need to bring a few more in. But for me, those are the 4 areas I think we're lacking in most.
Yeah, Darren Jackson on Twitter commented, need a solid defensive midfielder. We probably have technically the best midfield, but far too lightweight for League Two. Yeah, look, Darren, I think you sort of second everyone's opinion so far. We are definitely sort of light in stature in midfield, and certainly defensively that there's holes. But yeah, look, again, only time will tell. I'm sure Flynn has got his eye on the players that he wants, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to see some signings soon. Right, next sort of topic is the pre-season friendly at Eastleigh. Andrew, are you going to Eastleigh?
I will be. Yes. So I'll be interested to see how that pans out. It's kind of now at the sort of, God, 2 weeks to go, isn't it? Point.
Yeah.
That you know, you've got to. I think at this point you do have to start seeing some. I wouldn't say some emphasis on the result, but certainly more emphasis on the performance rather than getting minutes in the legs and trying out individuals in different positions. No, I think going back to last year, when they played at Eastleigh and Scott Lindsay's side was struggling a bit, and it was about a similar time of the season. I was kind of thinking, I was starting to get a little bit worried at that point. So, I think definitely. I assume unless otherwise stated, it is going to be. It will be the first team, I think. So, you're looking for them to start to show more sort of, I guess, kind of sharpness and readiness and understanding for the new season at this point.
Yeah. Having sort of spoken to the side, Andrew, what's sort of like the general feel in the team at the minute?
Yeah. I think it's okay. They seem sort of quite receptive to kind of Mike Flynn. It sounds like they've certainly been worked hard in terms of the fitness side and so on, and they're certainly trying to play from what I've seen. It's not going to be sort of Newport 1.0 from everything we've seen. That it is designed to be sort of much more on the ground, attractive football. Though they will put it long occasionally. So no, I think they're good, but again, I think they're just. I think obviously the sort of concern is getting in those extra players, but they seem very determined not to really kind of pay what they think is over the odds, and they're convinced that we're going to get to the point where everyone sort of plays chicken in the transfer market a bit, and they think they're going to get to the point where the prices will come down and they'll be able to get some good players. But no, I think they'll enjoy it. I would say I've spoken to Mike for a couple of times. I haven't done every sort of pre-season interview with him, but in terms of the sort of energy he gives off compared to sort of Jody Morris, who was quite downbeat, I think it's obvious he's more of a people person. So I would imagine, or it feels like the squad will respond, I would think, to that a bit more, perhaps compared to his predecessor. That I would hope that he will just be able to perhaps sort of motivate them a bit more effectively and just be someone that that they get a bit more energy off, I suppose,
of
the
course,
training ground, if you like.
Yeah, look, Flynn's done this all before. He's an experienced coach at this level. He knows what he's doing. I've got full confidence in Flynn. I mean, I only personally made my way down to the Melksham game. I think we played really well in the Melksham game. Showed some good quality up front, defensively as well. Arch, you mentioned Sonny Hart. He stood out for me when he come on in the Melksham game. I think he could. You'd hope to think that we're going to see some more academy players this season. Certainly Sonny Hart, Anton Dvorak, Harvey Fox, all these players, they've got a good reputation around the club, and you'd hope to think that we're going to see more of those players this season. But as a whole, I think we all believe that we need more defensive players in. Certainly that back line needs to get stronger. In sort of a defensive midfielder. That sort of moves us away from the football now and onto the club. There is earlier on today, the fans forum, which was I can't remember when it was, but it was cancelled and rescheduled, is now on Wednesday the 16th of August at 7 p.m. So if you're about, make your way down. I believe Mike Flynn will be in attendance, and is there anyone else? Will Clem be there?
Clem won't be there, but Jamie Russell will be there. Wayne Hatswell will be there. Rob Angus will be there, and I believe Mandy Coe and the stadium stroke project manager, whose name escapes me at the moment. So right. there'll be a fair few people there for you to get your questions in, and for those who aren't able to get there, we will obviously be broadcasting it live.
Yeah, of course. Look, a strong lineup of panel there. I think it will be an interesting one. I think it will certainly be good to have a more in-depth interview with Flynn, and certainly get behind his rationale as the manager and how he thinks pre-season has gone on. I think Andrew sort of made a good point that, Eastleigh coming up, we're 2 weeks away from Colchester. We need to be going out there proving a point. The players need to be proving a point to the manager, and I think that it could be a strong statement to the fans as well, that we mean business.
I think we also, in these games, because we've got Eastleigh there, I think the guys that Flynn has pinpointed to be the guys that are going to play at Colchester, they need to now start up in those games. They need to be playing 75, 80 minutes, because we've got Eastleigh and Plymouth, and that's all we've got now until that. Obviously, other players are going to come in, but we really need to get those minutes up to now.
Yeah, look, I mean, who knows? We may be bringing in some players before Eastleigh. I mean, if so, you'd expect them to get minutes. But yeah, it's a strong, it's a good opportunity for the players to showcase themselves and prove that they mean business and are ready for the upcoming season. I think that sort of just about rounds off the past week in Swindon Town world. Is anyone on my wonderful panel got anything to add?
I think we've probably just about covered it for now as well, because obviously we've got the issues with squad. We do need players in, and the sooner the better. But we realise these aren't easy. So, but hopefully we get people in who will get a week or so at least before that game at Colchester.
Yeah, look, I'll be very, very, very shocked if we do not see any more signings before the start of the season. So look, just stay as positive as you can be.
I got
am.
one for you.
Oh yeah, crack on, Daz.
Yeah, the advisory board minutes came out, and key thing from that is we owe less than £1 million now, something like 635,000.
Yeah,
which is brilliant.
Yeah, look, that number's coming down every month, I believe. We're getting closer and closer to zero. It shows the hard work going on behind the scenes. Look, you can argue on about how the footballing side is going, but you can't deny Swindon Town Football Club as a business and monetary side is probably the best it's ever been. You can't argue that, and props to Clem, Rob, and all the team at Swindon that are driving that number down lower and lower.
And also, though, as well, though, Ellis, as well,
Yeah.
from our chat with Jamie last week, the long-term plans that we're in there with the academies and whatnot, it's going to be an exciting future. It's obviously a long-term plan. It's going to take a while before that comes in, but it's thinking long-term, it's thinking sustainable, and we've got to be excited about that.
Yeah, key word there, Chris, is sustainable. I think the more sustainable this football club is, the more professionally run this football club is, eventually that will pay off, and I think then we can start look at it climbing the football pyramid. Of course, you've got to have a football club to even dream of getting to the Premier League, and I think we've over the past 2 years have done a really good job at getting the club back on stable ground. But yeah, look, we're at 1 minute past 9. We aimed for an hour. We gave you an hour and 1 minute. Thank you to all of my co-hosts today, Chris, Daz, Daisy, especially. Well done. Your first show, smashed it. And Andrew, Malk, and Arch, who have all left us now. But yeah, thank you to all my co-hosts. Thank you to everyone that contributed in the comments. As always, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is an independent Twitter space. We are not affiliated with the club nor Sir Tom Broadbent himself. So any views spoken tonight are representative of our own and not theirs. Right. Thank you all, and come on, you Reds.